So, Digby, of course, another week in the Trump era, one without Steve Bannon. Now he is obviously gone, but not forgotten there on his perch at Breitbart. And we should also say there was a total eclipse of the sun, at least for parts of the United States this week. Donald Trump looked at the sun no less than 6 times. It was recorded without his glasses. As far as we can tell, no ill effects on the president, although the baseline for that statement is pretty low to begin with. So hard to say. Let's talk about the other, or at least major policy announcement, I guess. And that was part of it. Is in the. It seems to me that in an attempt, at least partially, to get out from under the reverberations of the president's reaction to neo-fascists, to fascists marching in Charlottesville, he announced a major policy pronouncement speech for Monday night on our, I guess, in occupation, I don't know what else to call it, of Afghanistan. And it turned out to be not particularly major. Was it or wasn't it? I can't tell, to be honest with you.
Well, considering the fact that he gave us absolutely zero details on what this, major announcement was supposed to announce, it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, there were some, we knew that back in June, they had already announced that they were sending more troops to Afghanistan. And that kind of just was one of those things that sort of fell under the radar. They sort of presented it as being something kind of temporary. They needed to do it. And, of course, we know he dropped the mother of all bombs on Afghanistan earlier in the year as well, which he was very proud of because it made a big go boom, and he really liked that.
Did we find out what that was about? I mean, honestly, no. Was it they just dropped it in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah. I mean, apparently, there was some rationale for it that, nobody really understood as far as I can tell. I think they just wanted to drop it, and I think that part of it is that, this is part of Trump's demonstration of power thing, right? He wants to show, because then they'll never mess with us again. That's, that's the extent of his military strategy. I mean, he reiterated what he had said during the campaign about, wanting to, keep everything a secret. I mean, to him, the only military strategy that exists is a surprise attack. That's the only one that he understands. And so he says, I can't really tell you anything that we're going to do here because if I do, that will be giving information to the enemy. So no deadlines, no troop numbers, no anything. Now, he's going to run into problems because the Congress has to approve all that stuff. So, he may have to let the cat out of the bag at some point. But the entire speech was really just this vague, and it was obviously written by somebody other than him. I mean, there was language in there that I'm sure it's the first time Trump's ever heard of it. And, there was some stuff about how we're not going to take it from Pakistan anymore, and there's no blank check, and we're not going to do nation building, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, these are all things that we've heard from other presidents. Even President Obama said many of the same things, in a slightly more coherent fashion than Trump did. So, essentially, I think you're right. I mean, there was this idea that from the time Trump came in, that they were going to reassess the strategy in Afghanistan, which is that's a logical thing. A new administration,
perfectly reasonable,
then, of course, and
yes.
we should. And there had been a big battle with the military and with some of the outside advisors, including Steve Bannon, on what that new strategy should be, which we can talk about. But, this was going to happen anyway, and it doesn't sound like they've come up with anything. I mean, we don't know, again, no details, but assuming that what we hear from the leaks and the various reports in the press, this is really kind of more of the same, and it's the only thing that's changed now is that Trump has taken total ownership of Afghanistan. He can no longer kibitz, and that's one of the things I think the generals the generals in the Pentagon, Mattis in particular, had really wanted to do, because Trump has a bad habit of blaming other people for everything. And I think they
Right.
wanted to make sure that Trump went out and made a big speech and basically, took ownership of this new policy so that he couldn't turn around and say that it was all Mattis's fault or McMaster or the commander in Afghanistan. He knew what he was saying. He said that he'd studied it, right, and that he understood what he was doing there and that he had signed off on it. So, that's all I know. I don't know about you.
I think that last one is a fascinating and really important observation. The idea that, and if we look at the trajectory, we can see how this worked, right? They brought Jared, the son-in-law, to, I guess it was to Afghanistan and maybe to Iraq as well, put on a flak jacket over his sport coat and spent some time making him feel, I think, butch and macho. And this was part of the project. And that makes total sense to me, that from the perspective of the military, they don't want to be Donald Trump's scapegoat. They don't want to be a force in which, Donald Trump is running against the military in some respect, or making them out to be this deep state. And I'm not saying that I have a particular love of the military as an institution. Obviously, I think we need one, but I'm a little concerned at the prospect of a series of generals making our policy. And to some extent, this is something that we also understood about Donald Trump, is that he had early on said, I'm basically outsourcing any hard decisions to the military.
Right.
And that's where that 4,000 troop number came from. And we got to take a break here. But I want to ask you that. It does seem on some level, although this was, this sort of debates about Afghanistan ongoing, and you wrote about the 4 soldiers who came in to talk to Donald Trump. We'll talk about that. But I want to come back. I want to talk about the specific, to the extent that there were any, because largely it seems to me the speech was, I have a secret plan for Afghanistan. Obviously, I can't tell you, or it wouldn't be secret, and I just wanted you all to know that. And but it also seems to me that the question is whether or not this was just a head fake. It's just a way of resetting, changing the subject. But if it does have any implications in terms of our foreign policy, I think there's one or two things in the speech that stuck out for me that I think indicate what's happening. But I don't know how new it is for the Trump administration. We shall see when we return. We're talking to Heather Parton. I'm Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio. We'll be right back after this.